Welcome back to Young Business Professionals. I hope you're fine today and motivated to learn new things. In this video, I'm going to explain briefly the abbreviation DVP&R as well as the abbreviation PVP&R. If you're interested in understanding the meaning of these two common used methods in the automotive industry, watch this video to learn a few facts about it. Let's quickly take a look on what do these abbreviations stand for. A DVP&R is a so-called design verification or validation plan and report. It is a method that is used within the APQP process, and it is part of the APQP phase 2, so part of the product design phase. The design validation or verification plan is a plan that describes specific tests that have to be performed at a certain part build level, for instance at a prototype part build level or serial part build level, in order to verify or validate specific characteristics or functions at specific conditions. These tests shall prove the robustness of the design according to all customer requirements or to product requirements that have been set at the beginning of the program. The PVP&R is basically the same, so it is also a plan to verify and validate things, but it is rather related to the production process of the product. So it is part of APQP phase 4. Once the production process is in place and the first samples have been produced from it, these samples shall be validated or verified through the tests mentioned in the process validation plan. The target is to prove the robustness of the product and also of the process. Before we move ahead, I would like to explain quickly the difference in between verification and validation. Verification is a confirmation through the provision of objective evidence that specified requirements have been fulfilled. For example, a specific dimension that has to be checked and that will be verified by the test. Validation, in comparison, is a confirmation through the provision of objective evidence that the requirement for a specific intended use or a specific intended function or application has been fulfilled. For example, a dedicated function of the product that was defined at the beginning of the product development cycle on a drawing, for instance, and wherefore the validation test is being used in order to prove that this function is working under a specific condition. So it's rather related to the function. So once you ask yourself why people are making a difference in verification and validation, this definition is the answer on that. Let's now take a look on the method itself. In order to create a DVP or PVP, several requirements have to be collected, and you can see them here on the left. They will be added step by step into a validation plan that could be an Excel file, for instance. The basis, therefore, is typically derived from drawings, from product specifications, or engineering specifications, or the basis already existing test descriptions that will be added to the DVP or to the PVP. Is the same way for both methods. Pretty often both documents, the DVP and the PVP, are also created in the same by the same chance in the same sheet. Once the plan has been built using these inputs, it will be reviewed with the corresponding parties, sometimes with the client, also other departments in the company. And in case it is fine, all of the test descriptions can be defined after preparation of tests of the test they can run. The results of the tests shall be summarized in a test report per test, and in case all the results are positive, the design or the process can be considered as successfully validated, and in case results are negative, the design or the process should be revised and the test should be repeated, of course. And this might happen a few times in a row. In reality, it will happen. It's something pretty common. So you repeat tests again and again. You slightly change the product. You slightly change characteristics of the products in order to meet the agreed product specification in the test. In some cases, also a revision of the specification might be the consequence or the better alternative of changing the product again, but it just depends on the single use case. On the last slide of this presentation, I was summarizing a few points that should be typically included in every design or process validation plan, in my opinion. Let's go through step by step, and so after that slide you have a brief overview of what has to be added in a design and process validation plan in order to make it more or less complete. So typically there is a test number, clear to give just the test itself a name. There is the name of the test, because at the end the design validation or the process validation plan is just a list of planned tests that you are going to perform, and so you need numbers, you need names of each test, and then per test there is typically a specification, or let's say the number or the name of the specification, or of a standard referenced that shall be applied and used for this test, because a lot of tests are frequently done, are repeatedly done, and therefore it makes sense to define standards or specifications for these tests. And so you can just mention the specification in the design validation plan, so you can look up further details later on. Then usually there are also path-through criteria defined. Let's go on with the test description. Of course, there's a more detailed test description than the name of the test, so that roughly describes how the test is going to run. And there is also a number of DUTs, devices under tests, per build level. So there is a number of parts that will run through each and every test defined, and this is just important in order to produce enough prototypes or pre-serial parts or serial parts, and to have them ready at the beginning of the test, and to plan the test in a certain quality and way. And of course there's also the test duration mentioned, because the idea of a design validation plan is that you have a clear idea on how long the design validation is going to take, how many pieces you are going to need, and how many tests and which tests you have to do. So also the test duration is mentioned, and it is also mentioned which tests is required at which stage. So you do the design validation plan, you do the process validation, and then on top we may also discuss about requalification, but let's stick with design validation and process validation first, because let's say this is the scope of this video. And you define, okay, at the prototype validation I'm going to do this and that test, and I need 5 pieces of that. And once I have successfully validated this test already at the design validation stage and the prototype stage, I do not need to validate that again for the process validation, because there is no risk that this function might be more critical after running with a serial process. So it's totally enough to validate that by the design stage. Then, in addition, of course, there is also an area where the test result in the plan, in the overview, is mentioned. And so did you pass the test result successfully, or did we not pass it? And there's a comment section in order to explain different things and mention specific things of these test results. And what is important, what I forgot to mention here is, of course, there's also the pass-through criteria mentioned at the beginning of the design validation plan, let's say in between the specification and the standard reference that is mentioned and test description. So you define in the overview, in the validation plan, you define also the pass-through criteria, so everybody knows, okay, what's the criteria that has to be passed specifically in test number 3 with the name that might be a temperature cycle test, for instance. Okay, that was my short video about design and process validation plans and reports. Thanks to all of you for watching this video until the end. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward for your likes and your feedback below the video. Please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel to not miss further videos. And please feel free to check out our Facebook community as well. You find the link below the video. Have a great day.